Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG show. My apologies for the slightly late start today. Been a very busy day. Had to clean the place thoroughly, and then a bunch of stuff was moved out because this place has to be vacated. Everything has to be taken out by the end of the month. And so in order to avoid a last minute rush, a whole bunch of stuff was taken out to be given to thrift store or simply thrown away. And then there was a visit from the building inspector who was here about 1:30. And his inspection took about 2 hours. And then the fellow who is buying the condo came with his son, and they did a walkthrough and talked to the building inspector, and they left at, a minute ago, 2 minutes ago. That is a very loud tie, says Head McNeck. Actually, it's my favorite tie. It is flags of the American Revolutionary era. You could see the Gadsden flag there. I don't know, is the Gadsden flag now considered a hate symbol? I haven't been keeping up. But let's start with some breaking news today, which is a rather remarkable story. Which was broken by Ezra Levant's organization, Rebel News. The Globe and Mail ran a story saying that the Globe and Mail had come into contact with secret documents. As far as I can tell, the Rebel News was not credited because it was the Rebel News who made a Freedom of Information request and received few dozen pages of documents which had things redacted which were not redacted properly, so turns out that they can be read. And the story has to do with Chinese influence in Canada. Here is a summary from Breitbart by Joel Pollack. Documents reveal Canada planned winter training with Chinese troops canceled after U.S. request. Documents revealed Wednesday by Canada's Rebel News Network suggest that Canada planned to train China's military in cold weather tactics at a military base in Ontario and canceled the program reluctantly at the Trump administration's request. Ezra Levant, who founded the Rebel News Network, asked for the documents via an official information request that he filed after seeing a news report on Sputnik, the Russian propaganda site, that a Canadian official had attended an anniversary celebration for China's Navy in April 2019. China has been holding two Canadian citizens, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, as effective hostages since December 2018, following the Canada's arrest of a Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou, wanted in the U.S. The Canadians have been charged with espionage. The Canadian government gave Levant the documents, which have been posted at thechinafiles.com. Some appear to have been targeted for redaction, but were grayed out instead of being blacked out, leaving most of the words fully visible. The documents obtained by Levant suggest that a Canadian military official did indeed attend the PLA Navy 70th anniversary fleet review in, Qingdao, China in April 2019. But they also suggest that 6 to 8 personnel from China's People's Liberation Army were to participate in winter survival training at Canadian Forces Base Petawawa in Petawawa, Ontario. One reason the Chinese might have been interested in winter tactics, PLA soldiers would later become involved with Indian troops in the Himalayas. The documents also indicate that the U.S. Department of Defense had asked Canada's Department of National Defense to cancel the winter training. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been accused of pay-to-play fundraising with an advisor to the Chinese government, and Foreign Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne reportedly has mortgages with the Bank of China. It's my understanding that that the financing was moved to a different bank after Champagne's association with China became known. One email in the documents posted by Levant, dated January 28, 2019, indicates that back in December 2018, the Department of National Defense were keen to cancel the PLA's participation in the winter survival training following the request from the Department of Defense to do so. Another, dated the same day, suggests that the request came because the U.S. approach to China, quote, has shifted under the Trump administration, unquote. An email the following day asked whether several Five Eyes countries have expressed concerns about knowledge transfer versus the U.S. only. A January 30th reply indicates the winter survival training will not take place this winter, 2019. The security concerns originated primarily from the U.S. We do not have a record of other Five Eyes countries expressing these concerns to Canada. Five Eyes consists of the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, a group of allies who share intelligence and do not spy on one another by mutual agreement. Another member, that's pretty funny because it's my understanding that the British government, British secret services, were indeed spying on Donald Trump's campaign. But I digress. Let's see. Another memorandum labeled secret among Levant's documents explains that the U.S. specifically asked Canada to cancel the training. While this decision was taken following Ms. Meng's provisional arrest, we understand that it was driven principally by concerns voiced by the U.S. that the training could result in unintended and undesired knowledge transfer from Canada to the PLA. It also warns that Canada could interpret the cancellation in an unintended and unhelpful way to Canada-China relations, possibly as a retaliatory move related to the Meng Wanzhou case. A draft letter by Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Ian Shugart to Deputy Minister of National Defense Jody Thomas, both serving in the Liberal government of Justin Trudeau, asked that any decision by Canada to reduce or cut ties should be carefully considered to avoid sending any unhelpful or unintended messages. It asks that the Foreign Affairs Department, which for some reason we call Global Affairs Canada, be consulted before canceling or postponing any future joint military activities with China. Levant provided a comment to Breitbart News. I don't think any Canadians knew that Trudeau has been training the Chinese army here on Canadian soil at Canadian Forces bases. It's shocking to me that Canada would train a communist dictatorship in winter warfare techniques that could theoretically be used against us and will surely be used against our ally India, as well as against Chinese citizens in Xinjiang, Tibet, and Hong Kong. The anti-American language in the secret documents is deeply worrying as it shows that Canada is reorienting itself away from our traditional democracy allies and towards the world's worst tyrants, much like Pierre Trudeau tried to do during the Cold War. Now, I've made it clear on this show that there is little question that elements of Canada's foreign government have been suborned. The only question is, how deep does the treason go? Now, I mentioned a while back these extraordinary rumors that PLA troops were training in Stanley Park, which is the part of Vancouver, the end of Vancouver before the Lions Gate Bridge to the North Shore, and also in Prince Rupert, British Columbia, which is several hundred miles to the north. I didn't put much credence in these reports, but let's get back to the case of the two Michaels. That Trudeau and other members of his government have said repeatedly that they're doing all they can to win the release of the Canadians who were kidnapped in direct response 1 month later to the provisional arrest of Meng Wanzhou. Well, Trudeau could be doing lots of other things. Instead of offering favors to them, he could recall Canada's ambassador or Canada's consular officials. He could eject a Chinese ambassador and consular officials from Canada. He could close the embassy. He could close the consulates. He could stop. He could start looking to extricate Canada from its relationship with China. But no, he hasn't done any of those things. Trudeau's brother, there were three boys, and one of them died in an avalanche some years ago. But his surviving brother is extraordinarily close to communist China, just as the father, Pierre Trudeau, was extraordinarily close to what we used to call Red China. China has a lot of money to spend on suborning people, and there's also no question in my mind that significant members of the Canadian media have been suborned. Oh, I'll give you an example how that they get books published by, how would you say, top class publishers that no one is going to buy these books. And I believe that, an arrangement is made, say that the Communist Chinese buy up thousands of copies of such a book, and thus it becomes a bestseller in Canada. And these books are, I don't know, pulped back in China, or perhaps pulped here. If you look at the Canadian media and you see how many of its experts on foreign affairs are of the like that globalism is good, can't fight globalism, we must embrace globalism. Oh, by the way, the use of the word globalism indicates a belief in a conspiracy theory. Oh, China, China, China. We have nothing to worry about from China. Well, how about this? That the real estate industry in British Columbia represents about, 30-40% of the economy, and the real estate market in Vancouver is dominated and has been dominated for years by money which has been laundered in casinos by triad gangsters. That might be a security concern. I'm kind of wondering how Trudeau is going to weasel his way out of this, because all of the many scandals he's been involved with. I don't know. He gives that stupid smile of his, and well, he's grown a beard now, and I don't know. He talks about his socks or how hard he is working for Canada. And of course, the Canadian media has an intense psychosexual relationship with Justin Trudeau, the male journalists, just as much as the female journalists. So Trudeau, maybe he's been a bad little boy, but he's such a inspiration, not just to Canadians, but to the whole world. That's certainly the way that they look at it. Let's have a look at the chat. Hello to Buddy Walrus, Libertarian, Head McNeck. Steve says that tie has the unofficial New England pine flag on it. Anrun says, does anyone see anything from YT today that they're going to start pulling videos that claim there was widespread fraud? I will be talking about that later in the show. Walrus the Libertarian, what more evidence of treason do you need? I'll have more about Chinese efforts to suborn later on the show. Talking about a woman who is called, amusingly, Fang Fang, or perhaps it's pronounced Fung Fung, or Feng Fang, or Fong Fong even. We don't know. But I'll be talking about that amusing story. Steve says, plenty of regions of China that offer them the ability to train in cold conditions. Why would they need to go to Ontario? Oh, I don't know. I suppose it could be useful for them in making contacts. That's one reason why. Hello, Professor Paul. They go deep. Tony Soprano, quoted by Chogokin 666. Okay, nothing says money like a death related to skiing, says Halper. A bit gnomic. David Wright says cheaper to buy off media and government officials than military weapons and infrastructure. David Wright says, reminds me of a scene in the miniseries America with a K. Soviets and American politicians standing near Capitol and flippantly denying communist influence. Lamprey Milt says, the Vancouver model, it's called. A former mayor of Vancouver's KTV girlfriend's mother is on death row in China for real estate fraud. Buddy says, Kevin, are you a fan of Ye Old Christmas Pudding? Is that the ones with the raisins and dates and whatever in that? Is that a pudding? I'm certainly not fond of that. If there's any other kinds, I'm really not familiar with them. Tricky Who says, Portland's Mayor Wheeler doesn't have Orange Man Bad to use against his own city anymore. What, they have a Chaz or a Chop in Portland now? Steve says, Trudeau was a ski instructor. Maybe he'll teach the PLA personally. Okay. Dawn from Beyond. Yay, Florida. For the first time in the history of the pandemic, a state will require that all labs in the state report the critical cycle threshold level of every COVID-19 test they perform. Yes, we're finding out that people are dying of heart attacks, people mangled in car wrecks, people with massive cirrhosis of the liver and stage, whatever the worst stage cancer is, or their deaths are being ascribed to COVID-19. How about that? And also the flu apparently has disappeared. What, for the first time in, I don't know, decades, centuries? It's disappeared. So I wanted to talk about this phrase, COVIDiots, because yesterday, I don't know, perhaps this was foolish of me. I got into it with this fellow called at Happy Justice 4, self-described as retired lawyer, unapologetically opinionated. I regret nothing. Friend of First People. I block COVIDiots and hope you do too. And he was taking shots at Alberta because Jason Kenney apparently wasn't being tough enough on COVID-19. He was letting COVID-19 bully him. And I said to him, give me an example anywhere in the world of where lockdowns have worked. And I repeated this over and over again, saying that, okay, so there's various stages of lockdown, and then they're tightened. And the curve has been flattened, so the restrictions are eased, and then the number of cases shoots up. Of course, what does case mean in this context? And he claimed to live in Ottawa, and insisted that lockdowns in Ontario, what are you talking about? Just absolutely extraordinary stuff. Here's a story from CBC News yesterday. After Toronto and Peel region passed the midway point of their lockdown, indicators measuring the severity of the COVID-19 pandemic are not yet showing any sign of improvement. Golly, I wonder why. Raising the specter of prolonged or heightened restrictions stretching into the foreseeable future. In other words, the beatings will continue until morale improves. The two regions were placed under Ontario's grey lockdown restrictions by the government for a period of at least 28 days that could end as soon as December the 21st. Grey. So what would be the worst? Black? Would the black lockdown restrictions mean that the government kills everybody to make sure that they don't get infected by corona doom? The heightened public health measures include the closure of in-person restaurant service, gyms, and a ban on indoor social gatherings among people from different households. In the 2 weeks since those measures were installed, case counts and hospitalizations in Toronto and Peel region have continued their steady climb to the dismay of public health officials. More to the bemusement, I think, would be the point, because they obviously don't understand how viruses work. The case counts are so high that I can only call this a various situation, said Toronto's Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Eileen Devia, during a Monday news conference. COVID-19 is spreading aggressively in Toronto. Okay, so here's a story from 7 months ago. 7 months ago, from the blog to.com, Toronto is closing High Park so people can't gather for cherry blossoms. I wonder whether this fellow that I was debating with last night is actually a bot, or I don't know, perhaps the agent of a foreign country, because he didn't seem to understand that there have been lockdowns or restrictions of various kinds all across Canada as early as, April or March. In Victoria, where I was living, in-person dining was banned, in-person drinking was banned, and the churches were all shut. In Toronto, and I tweeted this on July the 17th, COVID-19 guidance for places of worship, communion, and other close contact activities, as advised by Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health, they're banned. All social gatherings, including before or after the service, banned. Food services, regular childcare and children's programming, banned. Indoor singing, use of wind instruments and choir service, banned. Sharing and distribution of materials and objects such as books, communion objects, microphones, prayer mats, prayer shawls, water, and chalices, banned. Holy water stoops and holy water rites, banned. No more passing collection plates. That sounds like a lockdown to me. But this fellow kept carrying on that apparently I wanted people to die. I've become used to that, inured, one might say, to that accusation, and it used to infuriate me. But when I hear that sort of thing, I just know that I'm talking to an idiot or someone who is being, shall we say, disingenuous. I could go over the numbers again, as I mentioned yesterday. The press release from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, which is run by my old friend from Edmonton, John Carpe. Government data shows lockdowns more deadly than COVID-19. The Justice Center today, that would be December 3rd, released a charter analysis on the impact of lockdowns on the lives of Canadians. Titled Flying Blind, this charter analysis demonstrates that Canada's federal and provincial governments have not properly and adequately considered the specific nature and the full extent of lockdown harms that result from the violation of charter freedoms to move, travel, assemble, associate, and worship. With COVID-19 touted by politicians and chief medical officers as an unusually deadly killer that everyone should fear greatly, one might expect an increase in death rates amongst Canadians. But in fact, deaths for the period from January 1st to August 31st, compared to 2016 through 2020, show that fewer Canadians are dying in 2020 than in 2019, even while Canada's population grows. And of course, data that was released, I suspect that they regret this, by the government of Alberta, revealed that of the COVID deaths in that province, of which there are 600 or so, only 11 were of people who had no other serious comorbidities, and a substantial majority of the deaths in Alberta were people who had 3, 4, or more serious comorbidities. But it doesn't make any difference, really, because COVID-19 is a respiratory disease, but as I've mentioned, it is also a brain parasite. And it's beginning to remind me more and more of MK Ultra. Whereas in that sinister CIA program, only a handful of hapless unfortunates were wrecked by this. But this version of MK Ultra destroys entire countries, entire societies, with the media cheering on wildly. Jason Kenney, it's been a bad week for Jason Kenney, my old friend, and I'll explain to you why the media has been hammering on Jason Kenney. 20 years ago or more, Kenney was considered to be the leader of the social conservatives in Canada. He had said, when he was a young man, expressed, one might say, rather spicy opinions about homosexuality and abortion and such like. He's left all that behind him now. He and his party wanted to march in the Gay Pride Parade and were turned down, and they had to beg, and they were turned down. He has no problem with anyone in Alberta having changing their sex simply by declaring that they have changed their sex. Kenney himself has boasted repeatedly of all of the gay Iranian refugees that he brought to Canada because, yes, when we were looking at the economy of Canada, society of Canada, what is it that Canada does not have enough of? And the answer, the consensus of the experts was, of course, gay Iranian refugees. A particularly fatuous column today on CBC News from Graham Thompson. After going eyeball to eyeball with COVID-19, Kenney finally blinks. Again, with the pathetic fallacy. COVID-19 is not a person. COVID-19 is not sentient. It cannot be coerced, browbeaten, or reasoned with. Here's the subhead. A reluctant premier reads the Pandemic Riot Act to Albertans, says columnist Graham Thompson. Apparently, Albertans have been very, very wicked because they have not sufficiently stopped living. So the Riot Act must be read to them. We're not going to punish COVID-19 because we have no means of punishing COVID-19. However, we can punish people. And Jason Kenney simply wasn't punishing people enough. After months of pleading with Albertans, writes Graham Thompson, to take personal responsibility to stop the spread of COVID-19, Premier Jason Kenney has finally taken personal responsibility himself. On Tuesday, he reluctantly announced the kind of sweeping COVID-19 restrictions he had been tersely rejecting for weeks. He's now ordering everyone to wear a mask in public spaces everywhere in Alberta, and nobody is allowed to hold any social gatherings outside. You can say hi to your neighbor walking the dog, but stay 2 meters apart and don't dawdle. Starting Sunday, you can only get takeout from restaurants and pubs, no in-person dining. Casinos are closing, as are bingo halls, raceways, bowling alleys, pool halls, fitness centers, spas, gym, indoor skating rinks. Retail stores can stay open, but only allow in 15% capacity at a time. Yes, I remember that. Going back to the spring in Victoria, where I would walk to London Drugs, which is, it's much more than a drugstore. Let's put it that way, more like a supermarket. Oh, I see. There appear to be 30 people in line in front of me. Oh, and how long is the wait going to be? An hour? An hour wait for the drugstore? No, I am not doing this. So we had all that in the past. And as I described, what's happening in Toronto, Toronto has been absolutely hammered with a lockdown, but it's not working. We had the governor of New Mexico saying this week, oh, we've run out of weapons to fight COVID-19. We had crushed the disease twice, but then it sprang back. Well, I guess you hadn't crushed it then, had you, Madam Governor? Punishing people does not hurt COVID-19. As Kenney recited the new restrictions, he must have felt like he was reading the Riot Act to Albertans. And in a sense, he was. As the pandemic grew in the past month from bonfire to wildfire, Kenney had tried to argue his way through the crisis by ignoring pleas from physicians, ridiculing the NDP opposition, insisting Albertans would bring the crisis under control by taking personal responsibility. In the end, he was done in by the might of two factors: freedom-loving Albertans who didn't take the COVID-19 virus seriously, and the COVID-19 virus that didn't take freedom-loving Albertans seriously. Adding those two together gives you the inescapable math of a pandemic. Well, there are mandatory mask mandates in Edmonton and Calgary, the two largest cities in Alberta, and have been for weeks now. Now, I'm going to scroll through this column, and let's see whether there are any numbers in this column. Oh, okay, here's one number. The lockdown announced today comes late, said NDP leader Rachel Notley. We could have acted 4 weeks ago. Since then, an additional 317 people have died. So that brings the total up over 600. So how many people died in total in Alberta last year? Over 26,000. For months, so-called non-essential surgeries and treatments were banned in Alberta. I wonder how many people have died of that. Again, brain parasite. Let's see how this ends. The reality is that because of logistics and supply issues during the first 3 months of 2021, only about 10% of Albertans will receive vaccinations, mainly healthcare workers and the elderly. The rest of us will have to wait and continue to wear masks, wash our hands, and practice social distancing for many more months. Ever get the impression that Graham Thompson is enjoying this? Perhaps by then, enough Albertans will know how to practice personal responsibility without Kenney having to read us the Riot Act. Yeah, it's like the old joke of the man bashing his head against a brick wall. It only hurts when I stop. This is from Fox 5 New York. A New York lawmaker has proposed mandating vaccination against COVID-19 if not enough residents voluntarily get the shot once it is available. Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal, who represents parts of Manhattan's West Side, earlier this month introduced a bill that would require the state to safely and effectively distribute an FDA-approved vaccine in accordance with the Department of Health's COVID-19 vaccination administration program, according to the language of the legislation. What about penalties here? Is there any mention of penalties? I suppose it's one more reason not to live in New York State. But of course, I feel sorry for those people who live, say, north of Westchester County. They don't really hold with the New Yorkers and the bridge and tunnel crowd, but they're stuck with it. From the Gateway Pundit, from Joe Hoft today, the Daily Mail reports that at least 4 individuals contracted Bell's palsy after taking Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. Relations between Pfizer and, wait for it, China also in question. The vaccine business is big money for Big Pharma, the large corporations that benefit from the production of vaccines. This was summarized by Bobby Kennedy Jr. months ago as he listed the protections these companies receive from the U.S. government, similar to the manner big tech is protected. The list of side effects from the COVID vaccine have previously been reported, but this morning's Daily Mail reports that recent cases of Bell's palsy developed from the Pfizer trial. 4 people who got the coronavirus vaccine from Pfizer in the firm's trial developed Bell's palsy, a form of temporary facial paralysis, according to U.S. regulators. FDA regulators say there wasn't any clear way that the vaccine caused Bell's palsy, but warned that doctors should watch for the alarming side effect and Pfizer should continue to keep tab on many people at strike. So is the FDA taking the position that this was a mere coincidence? Yes, and of course the vaccine makers, they are not going to suffer if this vaccine is a dud or it is harmful to people because they have been given protections against lawsuits. How about that? How about that? As I said before, if this vaccine is around for a year and it works and it is not killing people, maiming them, making them, fall asleep all of the time, or Bell's palsy, or it is not causing, an epidemic, as it were, of stillbirths and miscarriages in the United States. At that point, I will consider taking it. Until that, no. Let's see, what does the Drudge Report, the Panic Report, have to say? Vax allergy warning. Uh-oh. Anaphylactic reaction. Again, this is from the Daily Mail. Allergy risk on Pfizer jab. Day before FDA meet to give green light to vaccine, UK regulators warn people with significant food and medicine allergies not to take it after 2 health workers suffer anaphylactic reaction. Anaphylactic shock. Isn't that the reason we had the peanut panic some years ago? Oh no, someone's holding a Snickers bar across the room. Throw that thing away or I'm going to drag my child out of here. So apparently we take anaphylactic shock quite seriously. What other scare headlines? U.S. virus deaths hit record levels with the holidays ahead. Pandemic fatigue sets in among California's state faces viral tsunami. Florida officials defend raid on COVID whistleblower as new questions emerge. Jabs herald return to offices, but workers don't want to go. A day after being sworn in, Baltimore mayor issues strong restrictions. Hollywood insiders defend essential worker status. They are the most essential workers of all. People who work for Hollywood. They are the essentialists. Anti-mask protesters in ID overwhelm cops force cancellation of public health meeting. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. Germaphobe nation washing skin away. Newsom increasingly concerned about recall efforts. I would say that is the least of his worries, but I don't want to go any further in that direction. Oh, what is this from the New York Post, Tamar Lapin? That Pennsylvania Governor Nasty McMaskey has tested positive for COVID-19. The 72-year-old Democrat said he learned of his diagnosis Tuesday after a routine test. I have no symptoms and I'm feeling well, and I'm in isolation at home, Wolf said. No symptoms, feeling well. And he's 72, eh? I'm continuing to serve the Commonwealth and performing all of my duties remotely, as many are doing during the pandemic. The governor urged his constituents to take precautions against the virus, such as wearing masks, social distancing, and staying home when they can. As this virus rages, it doesn't really seem to be raging within his body. My positive test is a reminder that no one is immune from COVID. It's almost as if, wait, don't prompt me. I can get this. Masks don't work. How about that? Oh, but yes, Governor Nasty McMaskey appears that he's actually a cynic. This is back from October the 1st from the BizPac Review. Gearing up for a press conference, Pennsylvania's Democrat governor and a state lawmaker were apparently caught on a hot mic joking about political theater, seemingly in the context of wearing a face mask. By executive order, face masks are mandatory outside when social distancing is not possible, as well as indoors in most scenarios in the Keystone State. In a brief video clip that has nearly 1 million views as of this writing on just one Twitter feed, among the many that shared it, Governor Tom Wolf purportedly tells State Representative Wendy Ullman that, "So Wendy, I'm going to take my mask off when I speak." Ullman replies that I will as well, just I'm waiting so that we can do a little political theater, so it's on camera. In response to the resulting controversy, Representative Ullman told the Bucks County Courier-Times in a statement, quote, "While political theater may not have been the best turn of phrase, I'm not going to apologize for wearing a mask. as an elected official, I'm going to continue to use my platform to model good behavior that we know helps prevent the spread of the virus and work to bring relief to the hundreds of thousands that have been impacted by COVID-19. Lindsay Kensinger, press secretary, also chimed in. This is an out-of-context clip being pushed by an extreme fringe that believes COVID is a hoax. Do you remember when Dr. Anthony Fauci was seen at a Washington Nationals game after the worst opening pitch ever? And there he was, not social distancing with two other people, and he had his mask pulled down to here because masks are so very important. They're vital. They're vital, but apparently they don't prevent you from catching COVID-19. So if that's the case, why are they so vital? Why are they mandatory? Anthony de Blasi writes in The American Thinker, does anyone stop to ask what testing positive for coronavirus means? To be fair about it, something not forthcoming from mainstream media, the test, if positive, shows evidence of a variant of the virus that causes the common cold, coronavirus. The name given to the illness that this type of coronavirus can cause is COVID-19. Symptoms that indicate a need for testing should not be neglected, given the serious nature of COVID-19. It is important, however, to be aware that asymptomatic people who test positive are not contagious. Calling an incidence of a positive test a case is highly misleading, for it implies illness or impairment when many people suffer no symptoms at all. For those who are not ill and have no symptoms, what good is it for them to know that they have tested positive for coronavirus? One could ask this question of Governor Tom Wolf of Pennsylvania. Given that we have been breathing, ingesting, and touching microbes since birth, including nasty ones, why bother to find out if we have this new bug if we feel fine and have no symptoms of illness, unless we have been neglectful of basic hygiene, regularly eat junk food, don't get enough exercise or enough sleep? Do we ask to be tested for the virus that causes the cold, the virus that causes the flu, any bug at all when there are no symptoms of a health problem? Well, why then test for coronavirus? As I've mentioned before, Epstein-Barr syndrome, which is linked to mononucleosis and more controversially chronic fatigue syndrome, 95% of American adults have that in their body. Pneumonia virus, about 50% of American adults have that in their body. But this virus is apparently different from every other virus that's ever existed. And it's funny because they said exactly the same thing about HIV, didn't they? De Blasio concludes, if we don't dare live like normal human beings now, we will be made to live like imitation human beings in the future by dictatorial globalists who pretend to be our saviors. For the many who continue to accept as true what they get from television and from other mainstream media regarding coronavirus, thinking that, well, those news reporters wouldn't be lying, I have this to say. If you think the mainstream news delivers the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, you had better think again. Oh, and I wanted to say something about our heroic frontline workers. That I have a relative who's almost died, 3 times in the last year, and he couldn't get treatment in the province that he lives in because his was a non-essential disease. In fact, when the hospitals finally opened up in his province, he was about a day away from death. And so now he has all of these procedures, consultations, etc. planned, 15 or 20 of them, and he's canceled all of them because of his completely reasonable belief that if he goes into a medical facility, he's going to be infected there. Because in my country, as in the United Kingdom, these hospitals have proven to be complete rubbish when it comes to protecting their patients from COVID-19. Of course, in New York State, it doesn't help when the governor orders that infected people be sent to nursing homes, with the resulting number of deaths being estimated anywhere from 5 to 35,000 Oh, here's an amusing story, or infuriating, if you will, from Evita Duffy at The Federalist. When NBC News covered the viral story of a Los Angeles restaurant owner's tearful plea for help as she was forced to close her business's outdoor patio due to California's newest COVID-19 restrictions, they conveniently omitted a few key details of the restaurant owner's story. The viral video shows that an entertainment company was allowed to set up their own outdoor dining area less than 50 feet across from the restaurant, but NBC News failed to disclose that their parent company, NBC, was the group hypocritically partnering with Los Angeles city officials. The outdoor catering area was being set up for the crew of NBC comedy Good Girls, according to the New York Times. "I'm losing everything," said Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill owner Angela Marsden in the video. "Everything I own is being taken away from me, and they set up a movie company right next to my outdoor patio. My staff cannot survive." But I guess what she doesn't understand is that, Hollywood is the essentialist of all businesses, of all human activities. From Will Jones at Lockdown Skeptics. Here we go. Masks to continue into 2022, according to the UK government's chief scientist, Sir Patrick Vallance. According to the Telegraph, the public may have to wear masks for another year, despite a watershed moment beginning Britain's national vaccination program, Vallance said. As hospitals across the country begin administering jabs to the most vulnerable, the chief scientific advisor suggested that restrictions may remain in place long after its full rollout. He said, quote, "It may be that next winter, even with vaccination, we need measures such as masks in place. We don't know yet how good all the vaccines are going to be at preventing the transmission of the virus." The government scientists also said it would take quite a long time to make sure everyone in priority groups receives their jabs, urging the public to stick to the rules. Sir Patrick said the public could not afford to let our guard down as the vaccine is rolled out. You see, it's our fault if we get infected with this disease that it turns out even masks can't prevent. And the 72-year-old governor of Pennsylvania gets COVID-19, and he seems to be perfectly fine by his own account. He is perfectly fine. Mark Harper, chairman of the COVID recovery group of conservative MPs, yesterday urged the government to set out how freedoms would be restored to those who were vaccinated. Are the freedoms going to be restored? And if it turns out that this vaccination, I don't know, kills people in their 60s or 70s, what will happen then? What will the experts say? "Oh, that's very unfortunate. Oh, but they probably would have died anyway." Of course, that would be the opposite of what they're saying now, but don't rule that out. No excess deaths in Sweden this year. More evidence of a pseudo-epidemic. The latest ONS figures out yesterday show total deaths in England and Wales in week 48, ending November 27th, down by 79 compared with the previous week. However, COVID deaths are up by 343. Meanwhile, non-COVID deaths are right down at 941 below average. The mismatch between COVID deaths up and overall deaths down, and the sharp reduction in deaths attributed to other causes are classic signs of a pseudo-epidemic resulting from mass PCR testing, as described by Dr. Mike Yeadon. Rand Paul asks, why aren't we using proven COVID treatments? At a U.S. Senate hearing yesterday on early outpatient treatment, an essential part of a COVID-19 solution, before Senator Rand Paul and the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, a number of doctors advocated the use of various treatments that studies and clinical practice have shown to be effective. They included vitamin D, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine. Well, I suppose the reason that they're not being recommended, I don't know, this might sound outlandish, because if they prove to be efficacious on a large scale, then I guess we wouldn't need a COVID-19 vaccination, wouldn't we? Fox News posted a video from the hearing showing Dr. Pierre Corey, associate professor of medicine at St. Luke's Aurora Medical Center, titled, "I Can't Keep Doing This. Doctor Pleads for Review of Data During COVID-19 Senate Hearing." A report on Dr. Corey's contribution can be found at this website, Lockdown Skeptics. The resistance to the use of cheap and proven safe and effective therapeutics such as vitamin C, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine in this epidemic has been one of numerous mysteries that has cost many lives. Still, the government is not following the evidence on this. Let's have another look at the chat. See what is happening there. David Wright says, "I noticed Professor feels attacked when no one is intending such. Wish he could read this." Okay. Zinc, vitamin C and D, and sunlight, says Chogokin 666. Well, that's what I have been using, but of course I was using them before this panic began this year. Goose says Trump shouldn't have sided with Gates and Fauci over RFK Jr. back in 2017. Trump's mistakes allowed all this to happen. Trump should have followed his first instincts. He wanted to open the country up by Easter Sunday, and people would have howled, but he would have been much better off, and of course America would have been much better off. Polygon says COVID is a pandemic, more specifically a liberal moral panic. Every normal, sane, conservative person is going about their lives normally. Quachulango, BitChute, Brighton, Rumble, Odyssey, Daily Motion may be better than DLive. Okay. Trump says, David Wright says, Trump has got nothing to do with most of this. We are fighting for ourselves. Okay. Yeah. Lots of people still have their jobs because they're, essential people, like the stars of some new NBC sitcom. That's terribly, terribly important, certainly better than a restaurant or bar owner, because we don't need that sort of thing. Whereas endless trash, as they say at Red Letter Media, is absolutely essential. Polygon, well, no, as far as I want to go back to this idea of lockdowns, what are you talking about? Okay. Someone in the chat here got in touch with me. I'm leaving here. He lives in, not that far away. Could, a couple of us get together for a drink? And I said, sure. And now the question is that even legal? Under any circumstances? Seriously. That sounds like a lockdown to me. Polygons, a friend is in town for Christmas. His family are typical shitlibs and told him if he wanted to stay at their house, then he can't go out to see friends, etc. Okay, I see that there is some sort of battle between Ricardo Williams and Professor Paul. I'm not going to get into that. All right, and this is raging back and forth. This country's chance to show that we won't allow ourselves to be conquered was about 8 months ago. Yeah, okay. Press 1 of KMG should grow a beard. That's not going to happen. I'm going to have to be very feeble indeed before I allow myself to have a beard. This was recommended to me by a doctor, a dermatologist, when I was 20 years old. I suffer from a skin condition called pseudofolliculitis barbae. And what this means is that the hairs on my face and elsewhere on my body, they don't grow out straight, that they curve and then grow inward, creating a pseudo infection. And once requiring me to go to the hospital because this happened to one of my eyelashes. You see this, a lot of black men have this skin condition. You'll notice They will have these angry red bumps on their neck, the front or the back. That's a pseudofolliculitis. And this dermatologist lady says to me that you should grow a beard. I like beards. And I thought, I do not like beards. I experimented with beards for the longest time, but if you want to avoid the whole neck beard thing, then you have to trim the beard, which makes it even worse. Because where you have the beard, you can't see where the hairs have become ingrown. And these, without being too disgusting, these hairs used to grow to like this long inside. And so where you shave, then you get the normal problem with this condition. So no, beards, no. That is not going to do it. Again, I suppose, if I'm feeble enough in, I don't know, 10 years or more, then this might be forced on me. But I have an electric razor, so there you go. I think that even feeble, I should be able to use an electric razor. Okay, let's get back to it here after that digression. Oh, yeah, a final word from Alex Berenson. Yes, he has something to say about Governor Nasty McMaskey. I have no symptoms. That's a quote. The plague's so fierce, you have to be tested to know you have it. A reminder, Berenson writes, until we get decent excess mortality data for November, treat these COVID death totals as provisional at best. The Italian data show COVID deaths with a dementia comorbidity rose from 20% in the spring to 33% in the fall, and deaths with other very serious conditions also rose. Widespread infection plus PCR tests plus liberal counting rules mean that an increasing share of all deaths are likely to be counted as COVID no matter what causes them. Only excess mortality is reliable, and even it is not as reliable as we would like, since A, calculating baseline mortality is something of an art, and B, lockdowns kill too. So the Euronomo and CDC mortality data for November will be well worth scrutinizing. They will be well worth scrutinizing for those people who are interested in the truth, the people who are interested in empirical evidence, but we are in the midst of a brain parasite pandemic. Do you want people to die? No, I don't want people to die, actually, and that's one of the reasons why, people with cancer, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, etc., they should be treated. They should not be pushed to the back of the line. I want to talk about something funny now. A man called Eric Swalwell, born in 1980, serving as the U.S. representative for California's 15th congressional district since 2013. You may have forgotten this, but he announced his candidacy for president of the United States on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert on April the 8th, 2019. He stated that gun control would be the primary focus of his campaign. I'm reading from Wikipedia here. Swalwell participated in one presidential debate. During the debate, he commented that he was 6 when Joe Biden spoke of passing the torch to a younger generation. He withdrew on July the 8th, 2019. At the time, he was at risk of not qualifying for the second set of debates. Yeah. And he's in the news. He's in the news because of a woman called Fang Fang, or Fong Fong Fang Fang, whatever, from the New York Post. Rick Swalwell is refusing to say if he had sex with an accused Chinese spy who cozied up to a slew of U.S. elected officials, including him, in a bid to infiltrate the U.S. political system. The 40-year-old congressman was among a group of Bay Area Democrats targeted by the honey trap, also known as Christine Fang, or Fang, who entered the U.S. as a college student in 2011 and spent the next 4 years wooing the lawmakers to get close to sensitive government intelligence, according to a report in Axios. And remind me again why my country and the United States are so eager that our places in university, or that our universities and colleges must swell and swell and swell, must metastasize, so that we can accommodate all the foreign students from the People's Republic of China. Swalwell, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, has cooperated with federal investigations into Fang, according to his spokesperson. To protect information that might be classified, he will not participate in your story. I suspect that a lot of married men, and he is married, he's on his second marriage, they would like to be able to use this excuse. Are you carrying on with that woman from work? Sorry, that information is classified. Oh, I had no idea. Oh, I won't bother you about that anymore. And I'm looking at a picture of this Fang, or Christine Fang, and she is not an attractive woman. Are these people so desperate? Swalwell, in an interview with Politico, also sidestepped the question about how intimate he was with Fang, who intelligence officials said had sex with at least 2 Midwestern mayors as she tried to get information from them. It reminds me of a joke which I was told was popular in China a couple of years ago, and it goes like this, that a Chinese couple, a mother and father, have a daughter that they haven't been able to marry off. And they say, oh, well, and someone points out that she's not very good looking, and, that's the reason why. And so the father says, we'll send her to the West. They can't tell the difference. Swalwell said he has cut off all contacts with Fang, but his father, Eric, and brother Joshua still have the honey trap listed as a friend on their Facebook pages. And she shared a 2016 post from Joshua that linked to a video of him and his congressman's brother. Donald Trump Jr., meanwhile, questioned Swalwell's seat on the House Intelligence Panel, saying the congressman should be considered a national security threat because he might have been compromised by his relationship with Fang. Someone said on Twitter that every time a Swalwell speaks or is noticed in the House of Representatives, someone should yell out, Fang, Fang. And if they're questioned about this, say that they have Tourette's and can't help themselves. Is anyone saying that Eric Swalwell has sold out his country? I don't know. Is that even a crime anymore? Because we have very reliable information that Hunter Biden and his father, who occupies the office of president-elect, did so. But no, that's not news. The New York Post thought it was, but no. The rest of me, no. Why would anyone be interested in that? Let's see from the Daily Mail. Eric Swalwell refuses to admit wrongdoing over top secret friendship with Chinese spy Fang and demands probe into who leaked the story. Oh, going on the offensive. The former presidential candidate, for about 8 minutes, claimed his relationship with Christine Fang, or Fang, was leaked while he was involved with impeaching Donald Trump, and that classified information was being weaponized against him. Swalwell, who represents a Bay Area district and sits on the House Intelligence and Judiciary Committee, has refused to confirm or deny sleeping with Fang before he was tipped off in 2015 that she was a Chinese agent. She fled the country as the FBI investigated her and her infiltration efforts, which also saw her become friendly with other California politicians and have sex with 2 mayors from the Midwest, with the encounters caught by FBI eavesdroppers. Yes, and there's another amusing story about this in the London Sun. Late-night Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson claims security agencies believe he was in a sexual relationship with the suspected spy. Carlson told viewers U.S. intelligence officials believe that Fang had a sexual relationship with Eric Swalwell, We asked Swalwell's office about that directly today. His staff replied by saying that they could not comment whether Swalwell had a sexual relationship with Fang because that information might be, quote, classified. I think that there could be a global use for this justification. Did you eat the last donut? Did you use up all the coffee and forget to get more? I'm sorry, that information is classified. Whether you had sex with a Chinese woman is now, it's a matter that could be classified. And Heavy.com, which always delivers the goods in stories of this type, has a number of different pictures of Fang. Let's see. The report on Axios has led to speculation in the Buckeye State over the Ohio mayor's identity, who slept with her, but it hasn't been revealed. That mayor was only one of Fang's targets as she built up a political Rolodex. Rolodex? Do people still use that word? In a suspected long game espionage operation, she used a political long game. Misa Bonyu, long game. She used political gatherings, civic society conferences, campaign rallies, and campus events to connect with elected officials and other prominent figures. U.S. officials now believe Fang spied for China over a 4-year period. Reports say, again, not a good-looking woman. And, okay, Eric Swalwell. Oh, Donald Trump Jr. had tweeted, as the Chamber of Commerce would say, there are just some jobs that Americans won't do. According to The Hill, Fang was also a volunteer for the 2014 campaign of Representative Ro Khanna and appeared in photos with Swalwell, Khanna, then Representative Mike Honda, and Representative Judy Chu, all Democrats. Ro Khanna, R-O, new name, Khanna. So American politicians have Star Wars names now. The Midwestern mayor angle has Ohio buzzing. Could it be the mayor? Ugh, I'm looking at one of these mayors and I'm thinking, okay, this particular mayor would be delighted probably to have sex with any woman, regardless of what she looks like. I wish I could identify which one. He's just absolutely hideous. Oh, dear. Oh, okay. What else? Fang was enrolled in college and president of the Chinese Student Association there. They're not allowed to have white student associations, so why is this permitted? Fang's Facebook picture shows glamour shots and a beauty pageant picture. Beauty pageant, is it? Okay. So, this may have been superseded by events. I was following down a rumor about Swalwell, and I couldn't confirm it. This is from Fox News 6 hours ago. Pelosi has full confidence in Swalwell as congressmen scrutinized over ties to suspected Chinese spy. Wasn't another prominent California politician, Dianne Feinstein? Hadn't her office been infiltrated for years by a Chinese spy? Nancy Pelosi, she doesn't have any problem with him remaining on the secretive House Intelligence Committee that Pelosi appointed Swalwell to in 2015. A Pelosi spokesman told Fox News that the speaker will back Swalwell's continued service on the committee, which has access to classified material and oversees activities of the U.S. intelligence community. Yeah, how about that? It's just going to be open season for China in the United States when Joe Biden becomes president. But check that, Joe Biden is not going to become president in 42 days. Donald J. Trump is going to be inaugurated for the second time, and I will get back to that shortly. This is from Matthew Boyle at Breitbart. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told Breitbart exclusively that President Donald Trump and his administration have successfully exposed the Chinese Communist Party as the most significant threat to the United States, something he hopes will last long into the future. Thanks to the work of Trump and his administration, Pompeo said, combined with the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up of the origins of the coronavirus pandemic, the Chinese Communist Party and its influence operations around the country and around the world are well known in public. The CCP, the president's top diplomat and former CIA director, argued, was able to operate in the shadows with impunity for years, but now it can no longer hide its agenda and actions from the world. Well, it certainly did with Hunter and Joe Biden, didn't it? But I'm just so looking forward to Trump's second term, and I think he's going to move fast. Let's just see how many prominent people get hauled in for a questioning, and more than that. As for his trip to Georgia Tech, Pompeo made clear this is not, despite his critics' claims, a political trip, but one focused on exposing the threat of CCP malign influence on American campuses. He pointed to a recent speech from Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe, who similarly has raised the alarm about such threats from the Chinese. As for my trip to Georgia, this is a speech about Chinese influence operations, Pompeo said. What else has been happening in Georgia lately? I wonder if China could have anything to do with that. I live stream on YouTube, which is owned by Google. And I think I'm going to have to be very careful about this next item on my agenda, or the sked, as they used to say in radio when I worked there. From the New York Post, Nicholas Vega. YouTube says it will no longer allow users to upload videos claiming that President Trump lost the 2020 presidential election due to fraud. The video streaming giant made the announcement in a Wednesday blog post titled Supporting the 2020 U.S. Election. YouTube, until this point, has allowed videos attacking the vote counting process and disputing the results of the election, saying that, quote, discussion of election results and the process of counting votes, unquote, was permitted by its rules. The new rule has been put in place because enough states have certified their election results to determine a president-elect, the company said. Once again, it seems to be the belief of both Twitter and YouTube that the United States doesn't need an electoral college because it has social media, which is sufficient. And I'm looking at the YouTube official blog with a very strange illustration at the top. Updates to our work supporting the integrity of the 2020 U.S. election. Is that really its job? That is the final arbiter of integrity in American politics? It would appear so. And a story from Tristan Justice at the Federalist on the same theme. It's clear, however, that YouTube's censorship of election reporting only goes one way, implemented for the first time 2 years ago after imaginary Georgia Governor Stacey Abrams has repeatedly refuted the results of her lost 2018 gubernatorial race as unfair, contrary to the evidence. Logan Hall tweeted, didn't notice a safe harbor deadline from YouTube on a certain Georgia governor's race. Oh, let's see. He also linked or provided shots of other videos on YouTube. New evidence on Russian interference in the 2016 election. Hillary Clinton claims 2016 election was stolen from her. And following up on that, another story from Tristan Justice makes it clear that it's not all conspiracies that YouTube's theories thereof intends to ban. Here are some that it does not ban. Russia stole the 2016 election. Trump was rigging the election through the post office. 9/11 was an inside job, and aliens built the pyramids. What does Donald Trump himself have to say? 2 hours ago, wow. At least 17 states have joined Texas in the extraordinary case against the greatest election fraud in the history of the United States. Thank you. This claim about election fraud is disputed, says Twitter. And I just have to say that, yes, of course, that it was just completely integrity. Okay. I'm just reporting what other people are saying. Okay. But as far as integrity goes, 2016 was the integrityist. Okay. But Donald J. Trump is still president of the United States, and what he says is newsworthy. So I will repeat several of the things that he has put on Twitter today with no comment. At 10 p.m. on election evening, we were at 97% win with the so-called bookies. And also, if somebody cheated in the election, which the Democrats did, why wouldn't the election be immediately overturned? How can a country be run like this? At 9 hours ago, just the hashtag overturn. From CBC, U.S. President Donald Trump Wednesday asked the U.S. Supreme Court to let him join a long-shot lawsuit by Texas seeking to overturn his election loss by throwing out the voting results in 4 states, litigation that also drew support from 17 other states. A lot of states want to get in on this. And who will be the fraud deniers, says Jay Valentine, an American thinker, flipping the script, I believe they call it. These are just anomalies. They happen in every election. Well, folks, anomalies cease to be anomalies when they all go in one direction. When every outlier favors Biden, we enter the realm of prima facie fraud. Fraud is an ugly word. It does not have a pretty synonym, too bad. Election fraud at the industrial scale perpetrated in the 2020 election is a crime most Americans will remember all their lives. Books and movies will come out. Retired math PhDs exiled to the basement by their spouses will continue to find statistical patterns that simply do not happen in straight data sets. Books and movies? I'm not so sure about that. Something interesting and very significant happened in the United States in the 1960s and 1970s. After cities were desegregated, sometimes forcibly so, and school busing was introduced, the schools went to pieces, and white people, typically white working class people, typically white ethnics, Irish, Italians, Polish, Slovaks, etc., they fled to the anonymity of the suburbs. And such was the panic that they took whatever they could get for their houses, and in many, many occasions started off in a very deep hole. These were ethnic neighborhoods that had existed for generations, wiped out in the space of a decade or less. Have you ever seen any movies about that? You ever seen any TV shows about that? There are some books about this, not many, and they're not the kind of book that's liable to be reviewed, say, in the New York Times or the New York Review of Books, are they? And so how does Jay Valentine conclude? It was easy for Governor Ducey or Kemp, the hapless Georgia Secretary of State, and Lieutenant Governor to be above it all and deny fraud for the first couple of weeks. These are the good guys. Elections are honest. This is America. Let's move on. But we aren't moving on. Things are getting sticky. There's that video of the suitcases. Yuck. So inconvenient. Then that Trump rally, masses of committed voters, all with one voice, stop the steal. Shouted together does not scare guys like Kemp in a very existential way. This was not supposed to happen. Packets went to Iran, Serbia, Germany. Why? People are noticing that there is no Dominion CEO coming forth under oath saying not so. Even the most computer illiterate understands this is not as it ought to be. There's a universal characteristic to really bad news. It never comes out early. It drips out a bit at a time, and there is always one more painful point coming. This narrative is coming apart, and it will only escalate, move quickly, get more colorful. People will turn. Who then will be the 2020 election fraud deniers? Hey, Ducey, Kemp, rhinos, it's all downhill from here. And another story from The American Thinker by Donald Finley, How to Steal an Entire Country. It's been over a month since the election on All Is Not Well in Mudville. The home team fights round the clock to prove that the challenger cheated, and the challenger makes no effort to calm fears or address concerns, just continues naming cronies and planning not just to take over the ballpark, but to change the rules for the entire sport. He concludes, in the end, it comes down to this. What does it mean to have right versus wrong, corrupt versus honest, truth versus lies, fair versus stolen, all work out backwards? The last place on America the rest of the world would have thought that possible is right here, our America. Abraham Lincoln said, we shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. He was talking about slavery, an evil that needed to be purged from our nation lest we lose our nation altogether. There are many evils, but today the foremost evil we must address is the Democrat Party's corruption of our national election. We all know what happened and what the right thing is. We need to fix it now. The details and the prison terms can be figured out later. Oh, and in completely unsurprising news, we have an update about everyone's famous rascal, Hunter Biden. Actually, I believe his given name was Robert. But Hunter, it fits him, doesn't it? From the New York Post, Steve Nelson and Bruce Golding, President-elect Joe Biden's son revealed Wednesday that he's under federal investigation for possible tax fraud, with a report saying the Justice Department is examining his overseas business dealings. The probe also reportedly involves a laptop, that belonged to Hunter Biden, the existence of which was first reported by the Post, and which contains communications and documents detailing some of his business dealings in China and the Ukraine. Hunter Biden, 50, disclosed the probe in a statement released by his father's Presidential Transition Office. Quote, I learned yesterday for the first time that the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware advised my legal counsel also yesterday they are investigating my tax affairs. I take this matter very seriously, and I'm confident that a professional and objective review of these matters will demonstrate that I handled my affairs legally and appropriately, including with the benefit of professional tax advisors. Well, I mean, who could deny the how would you say, moral decency, fundamental moral decency of Hunter Biden? I'm looking at a PDF here, which comes from the Supreme Court of the United States. State of Texas plaintiff versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, State of Georgia, State of Michigan, and State of Wisconsin defendants on motion for leave to file bill of complaint from the Office of the Missouri Attorney General. And who are the amici, the people, the other states who have signed on? There are a lot of them. Missouri, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, and West Virginia. Amici have several important interests in this case. First, the states have a strong interest in safeguarding the separation of powers among state electors in the regulation of presidential elections. The states have a strong interest in preserving the proper roles of state legislatures in the administration of federal elections, and thus safeguarding the individual liberty of their citizens. Second, amici states have a strong interest in ensuring that the votes of their own citizens are not diluted by the unconstitutional administration of elections in other states. When non-legislative actors in other states encroach on the authority of the legislature thereof in that state to administer a presidential election, they threaten the liberty not just of their own citizens, but of every citizen of the United States who casts a lawful ballot in that election, including the citizens of amici states. Third, for similar reasons, Amici states have a strong interest in safeguarding against fraud in voting by mail during presidential elections. So we have the two different suits. Now, the first one it's been put on the docket. So that one is going ahead. What the Supreme Court will do, who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But people are saying, oh, yes, these nuisance suits, they're going to be swept aside, and Trump will be hustled out of the White House on January 21st. Well, I'm not betting on it. I'm simply not. Because Trump is not the sort of person to say, oh, well, they stole it fair and square. Oh, Arizona becomes 18th state to back Texas in lawsuit against Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Wisconsin over fraudulent election. That's from the Gateway Pundit. Oh, deranged Marxist and New York Attorney General Letitia James vows to press charges against President Trump after he leaves office. She'll make up charges later. Yeah, that's really not the sort of thing that you say if you're interested in people thinking that you're acting correctly. Yes, a sentence first, indictment later. Oh, how old is this story? Oh, this is from today. The hits just keep on coming. After 4 years of stonewalling, corrupt FBI finally admits they're holding Seth Rich's laptop. Wow, just the wonders. The wonders never cease. I'm just going to look in. Oh, okay. Marsha Blackburn writes at Breitbart, the Senate should investigate cozy relationship between Biden Incorporated and China. Ben Rhodes, a former deputy national security advisor during the Obama administration, said Wednesday on MSNBC's Deadline that blood would be on President Donald Trump's hands if someone got hurt because of his claims of election fraud. Oh, so if a policeman shoots someone who is smashing up a building, setting it on fire or whatever, yeah, we can see where this is going, right? A new poll reveals that 60% of Democrats want social media companies to do more to stop misinformation, while 2/3 of Republicans think that big tech is already doing too much. Hunter Biden investigation linked to Chinese company in laptop emails. GOP Arizona Chair Kelly Ward, are we going to go to the Supreme Court in the United States? Maybe. Well, it appears that decision has already been taken. Kamala Harris vows amnesty in first 100 days, restarting immigration from exporters of terrorism. Yeah, okay. But of course, I mean, why wouldn't anyone? Oh, you're talking about a few bad apples. Oh, you mean like the 9/11 bad apples? Ocean Shores man attacked after confronting men for not wearing masks. Where is this from? Ocean Shores. I don't know. Cairo 7. So Cairo is in Seattle, so it must be a suburb of Seattle. Daniel Troublefield, now there's an interesting name, 43, says he was at the Ocean Shores IGA, and that's a grocery store, Independent Grocers Association, Sunday night. When he called someone out for not wearing a mask inside the store, he said the conversation turned heated, but he thought that was the end of it. However, he was not expecting what happened once he walked outside. I curled up in the fetal position and was just ready to die, said Troublefield. Okay. The piece here, y'all, you know how I feel about y'all, really need to understand how mRNA vaccines are designed and executed. You're not going to like it. Understand this. mRNA vaccines are not vaccines. No, what we are dealing with here is biotechnology and bioengineering. In short, it is genetic modification. Imagine the exuberance of the Luciferian Gates-funded pharmas, not to mention Gates himself, in their pursuit of being God. So how does it work?
When cells divide, the strands of DNA are replicated, and the messenger RNA, mRNA, play a vital role in processes known as transcription and translation. The thing Moderna, Pfizer, Gates have come up with is a synthetic strand of mRNA which penetrates the membrane of healthy human cells and hijacks the normal replication process. The previously healthy human cell will now be transformed to produce a fragment of the actual virus, the so-called spike protein. This molecule will be recognized as a pathogen, provoking an immune response. The previously healthy human cell will now be transformed to produce a fragment of the actual virus. You read that correctly. The following is from the first paragraph of the wiki entry on this technology. An RNA vaccine, or mRNA vaccine, is a new type of vaccine that transfects molecules of synthetic RNA into human cells. Once inside the cells, the RNA functions as mRNA, reprogramming the cells to make the foreign protein that would normally be produced by the pathogen, e.g. a virus. These protein molecules then stimulate an adaptive immune response that teaches the body to destroy any pathogen. The mRNA molecule is coated with a drug delivery vehicle, usually PEG-related lipid nanoparticles, to protect the fragile mRNA strands and to aid their absorption into human cells. Little is known about the medium and longer-term side effects. Nano. Yeah. You ever heard of gray goo? I'm reading from Wikipedia here. Gray goo is a hypothetical global catastrophic scenario involving molecular nanotechnology in which out-of-control, self-replicating machines consume all biomass on Earth while building more of themselves, a scenario that has been called ecophagy, eating the environment, more literally eating the habitation. The original idea assumed machines were designed to have this capability, while popularizations have assumed that machines might somehow gain this capability by accident. Self-replicating machines of the macroscopic variety were originally described by mathematician John von Neumann and are sometimes referred to as von Neumann machines or clanking replicators. The term gray goo was coined by nanotechnology pioneer K. Eric Drexler in his 1986 book, Engines of Creation. In 2004, he stated, "I wish I'd never used the term gray goo." Engines of Creation mentions gray goo in 2 paragraphs and a note, while the popularized idea of gray goo was first publicized in a mass circulation magazine, Omni, in November 1986. Yeah, so this vaccine, which is not a vaccine, is going to be screwing around with your genetics at pretty much the most basic level, or close to the most basic level. And what could go wrong there? Let's just rush to take this vaccine. Let's make it mandatory. And we won't be able to be difficult. The people, if we have a scenario where the people who take the vaccine have much worse outcomes than the people who do not take vaccine, what would happen then? Well, the pharmaceutical industry would be discredited forever, would it not? And the people such as Bill Gates, who pushed this so hard, they'd be in trouble, wouldn't they? Scott Adams, he tweets, responding to Ryan Saavedra, who said and he's dealing with a report here, the FBI stopped investigating Hunter Biden while his dad was running for president. Scott Adams comments, the fake news is so powerful now, it can so what? Any news. If the Holocaust happened today, they would cover it with one sentence and then back to Trump's tweets. Yes, and good news. U.S. government states bring antitrust action against Facebook. Belgium's health minister puts ban on non-essential sexual activities of persons 3 or greater in indoor areas. Is this woman Maggie de Block still Belgium's health minister? Just let me check here, because there was a lot of fun had with her, particularly her physiognomy. Okay, she was health minister until this year. She is morbidly obese. That is the only way to describe her. The only way. Oh, following a reshuffle on the 9th of December 2018 to prevent the government's collapse, she additionally resumed responsibility for asylum and migration. So when did she stop being September 30th to block out as health minister in new Belgian government? So I don't know whether this amusing headline is a fake or not. Hirschhorn had tweeted, "Canary in the coal mine indicator post Supreme Court's peremptory rejection of the Trump challenge. Dilbert Guy has abruptly stopped claiming Trump will win the election and has moved on to attacking Nancy Pelosi." Scott Adams responded, "Good example of how my critics only attack their inaccurate hallucinations of my opinions. I've said for weeks Biden would take the job, but history will show it was stolen. O ye of little faith." And J5 Killer. Ajit Pai, going back in last year, a thread. WeChat keeps banning Chinese Americans for talking about Hong Kong. Jolly Lady of the Lake responded, "Reading the entire thread is like entering the belly of a dragon. Hic sunt dracones. Enter if you dare." John Bresnahan had tweeted, "Leader Hoyer," that would be Steny Hoyer, "takes a picture with Democrats not coming back next year after losing on election day, now telling story about elections he lost. Do not lose heart," Hoyer said. J5 Killer comments, "Nice to see odious Clinton gnome Donna Shalala in the front row. Bye. Oh, Big Trouble in Little China, a.k.a. Capitol Hill. And there is a GIF here from the John Carpenter, Kurt Russell of the same name. Let's have a look at the chat before I move on to the next subject. Jules Roy said the Belgian headline is from earlier in the year. YT says, "My hope is that if I don't wear it, maybe one other person will see me and take theirs off too." Ricardo Williams says, "Alec Gillard's the only person that has ever said something to me about a mask was a guy without a mask on himself. He refused me service at a food truck. I told him to F himself and went to another." Okay. Chokokin666 says, "Took off because my glasses got fogged up while Karen appears out of somewhere to yell at me. Tell her to..." Okay. David Wright says, "Of the 5 cases of actual COVID that I know, none passed it to other people in the house." Well, as I said before, my father got COVID-19. I've seen his death certificate, and strangely enough, it doesn't mention a cause of death. But guess where he was infected? He was infected at a long-term care facility. Thanks for reading my dumb comments, KMG, says YT. Okay, wow. I see that Ricardo Williams is in a unpleasant mood today. I'll just, I'd like to make it clear that this is my good taste YouTube live stream, and I ask everyone as much as possible to maintain decorum in the chat. Okay, wow, just a lot of people attacking other people in the chat today. Yeah, this is golly. I think I'm going to step away from this, actually. I'm going to step away and talk about something else. Let's talk about Gwyneth Paltrow. Poor, pitiful Gwyneth Paltrow. She's interviewed by People magazine. I've long had an interest in Gwyneth Paltrow because she's a beautiful woman who can act, and that is exceedingly rare. Gwyneth Paltrow knew she wouldn't want to act forever when she was just 26. On Sirius XM's Quarantined with Bruce. Oh, Quarantined with Bruce, huh? I wonder who the Bruce is. Okay. Gwyneth certainly looks, it's Bruce Bozzi or Botzi, I don't know how it's pronounced. When she was in her mid-20s, fresh off an Oscar win for Shakespeare in Love, when she realized she didn't love acting that much, as it turned out. Did you see Glenn Close said within the last week she thought that Gwyneth Paltrow's Oscar was rather mysterious? There's a number of reasons which have been brought forward as to how Gwyneth Paltrow managed to land that part. Very funny stories, I must say. I sort of felt like, well, now who am I supposed to be? Like, what am I? What am I driving towards? Paltrow explained that part of the shine of acting wore off due to the intense public scrutiny of being a young actress in Hollywood, being a kid who's like living every breakup on every headline, like being criticized for everything you do and say. And also it's so transitory. You're always all over. It's hard to plant roots. Like I'm such a homebody, you know. I like to be with my old friends and cook and squeeze my kids. Like I don't want to be alone in a hotel room in Budapest for 6 weeks. Like it's just not who I am. Yes, she values her privacy, which is why she made these strange comments about her divorce. Only she didn't call it a divorce. She had some name, something coupling. Perhaps someone in the chat will know. Conscious uncoupling. And I thought, what, you trying to put a positive spin on this? It's a growth experience. Is it? Yeah. Okay, here we go. According to Wikipedia, Paltrow cut down on work after becoming a mother. She also suffered from postpartum depression after the 2006 birth of her son. In March 2014, Paltrow announced that she and Chris Martin of Coldplay had separated after 10 years of marriage, describing the process as conscious uncoupling. In her official announcement, Paltrow had her doctor, Dr. Habib Sadeghi, and his dentist wife, Dr. Sherry Sami, explain conscious uncoupling. Quote, a conscious uncoupling is the ability to understand that every irritation and argument within a marriage was a signal to look inside ourselves and identify a negative internal object that needs healing. From this perspective, there are no bad guys, just two people. It's about people as individuals, not just the relationship. Yeah. So that's why Gwyneth Paltrow moved away from acting. Is it? I'm going to suggest an alternative hypothesis here, that acting is hard. It's hard work, particularly acting for the movies, in that, if you're acting on the stage, you know exactly when you are going to perform your play. It's, if it says 8 o'clock, it starts at 8 o'clock, right? Also, you perform the part many times. And also, if you're on the stage, maybe you start off a little slow and you need to get warmed up. Or perhaps your performance can get better after, numerous performances. You can't do that in the movies. You have to be ready to bring it when they tell you to leave your trailer. It is, very high intensity kind of work. Gwyneth Paltrow decided that she didn't want to do that anymore, and I can understand that, but she decided that she was going to sell worthless garbage to credulous women at incredibly expensive prices. She has a brand which is idiotically named Goop. And, oh, yes, but she's just the woman behind the company. No, she is the face of the company. And you should buy a vagina-scented candle for God knows how much money, because I'm telling you to. I love them myself, etc., etc. Of course, an actor is a certain type of pitchman or pitchwoman, if you will. But presumably in the service of art, she is now a pitchman, pure and simple, in the service of money. I wanted to talk about a piece. I've been putting this off for several days because I have not been allocating my time well. A piece that appeared a week ago on Tacky Mag's site by Steve Saylor. He writes, when reviewing movies, I'm less interested in propounding whether or not a film is, in my opinion, good than in explaining what types of people would find this a good film. As an old market researcher, it is only natural for me to pay attention to who would like what, which makes me less arrogant about my own tastes than most critics. Thus, I couldn't resist downloading the data behind a new research paper by marketing psychologists Gideon Nave, Jason Rentfrau, Sudeep Bhatia, entitled "We Are What We Watch: Movie Plots Predict the Personalities of Those Who Like Them." From a large sample of Facebook users who made public their results on a standard personality test, the authors scraped which movies the test takers chose to like on Facebook. They found 846 films that had been linked by at least 250 people who had taken this psychology quiz, ranging in date from Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz in 1939 up through 2011. For each film, they constructed an aggregate fan personality profile. The participants are mainstream Americans rather than cinephiles, unlike with the Internet Movie Database's ratings. The most often liked movies in the female majority Facebook archive are the Twilight movies, followed by Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and The Hangover, the film most frequently cited by men. I just want to say something about The Hangover. I thought that I don't know, I thought it was like a C+ movie. As Colby Kosh pointed out, a very serious, this is an unfixable problem about this movie, is these people went on the bender of all benders, and they wake up with the hangover of all hangovers. And people who have the hangover of all hangovers, they simply want to stay in bed, perhaps with an ice pack against their head, and remain close to the restroom, so they can go in and vomit. They are not actually going around solving mysteries because I guess it wouldn't be such a bad hangover then, would it? Steve Saylor continues, well, IMDb's ratings are dominated by male tastes. For example, its number one is the prison movie The Shawshank Redemption, which features almost no speaking roles for women, followed by the first two Godfather movies. The majority of the Facebook participants are women, typically averaging in their 20s. Each participant has a personality profile based on the currently dominant 5-factor or ocean model, which posits 5 main dimensions of personality. 1, openness to experience, inventive, curious versus consistent, cautious. 2, conscientiousness, efficient, organized versus extravagant, careless. 3, extroversion, outgoing, energetic versus solitary, reserved. Agreeableness, friendly, compassionate versus challenging, callous. And 5, neuroticism, sensitive, nervous versus resilient, confident. The ocean analysis was worked out largely by having college students fill in endless personality quizzes and then applying the art of factor analysis to the results. It's uncertain if it works as well outside of the weird, Western-educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic world, but it serves adequately for American movie fans. On Facebook, to show you how, let's compare who likes a couple of quite different famous movies, Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts versus Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. 92% of women liked Pretty Woman, whereas only 24% of men liked A Space Odyssey. And we see, yes, openness for 99%, Space Odyssey. Conscientiousness, only 26%. Extroversion, only 2%. Agreeableness, only 15%. Neuroticism, 64%. This is a pretty good comparison, I think, because Pretty Woman, at least for a lot of women, is obviously it's a fantasy of wish fulfillment. Well, she is a hooker, but Julia Roberts, I suppose, she just seems like a normal, sweet woman, right? And she gets swept off her feet by a very handsome man who turns out to be extraordinarily wealthy. So women see this movie and they think, yes, I would like to do that, or I would like that to happen to me. With 2001: A Space Odyssey, it seems a lot of men, like me, for instance, see this movie and they think this is very interesting. This is perhaps, the most interesting thing that I've ever seen, because there's a mystery there. Star Child. What is the Star Child? What does the Star Child portend? Well, it's not explained, is it? So you get to come up with your own hypothesis as to what the end of the movie means. And I suspect that most women regard endings like that as being cheated. Not surprisingly, Steve Saylor writes, for a film that attempted to depict just how alien an alien intelligence might be, 2001 fans rank very high in openness, 11th out of the 846 movies. The only famous film that scores higher is David Lynch's dream surrealist Mulholland Drive. In contrast, Pretty Woman enthusiasts fall only at the 12th percentile out of the 846 films on openness. They tend to be rather basic. Openness correlates with aesthetic interests, so the films at the top tend to be spectacular looking. I can recall seeing 2001 at the Cinerama Dome in 1968 when I was 9 and being sure I had never been to a movie that looked like it before, and maybe nobody else had either. Pretty Woman, on the other hand, was directed by sitcom writer Gary Marshall, an efficient helmsman, but not one to pioneer lens flare as an art form. In other words, the stats vindicate stereotypes. People who like Pretty Women on Facebook are more or less like Romy and Michelle's high school reunion come to life. And the typical 2001 nut is comic book guy from The Simpsons. But that couldn't be me because I don't have a neck beard, do I? And I'm not wearing a t-shirt on my show, am I? In general, women are less chauvinistic than men about movies. Among the top 10 pictures for the highest percentage of male fans, famous ones include Oliver Stone's Platoon, Ridley Scott's Black Hawk Down, Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now, and two Kubrick's 2001 and Doctor Strangelove. But women still furnish 22 to 25% of these guy films' likes. Yeah, Black Hawk Down. I love that movie. I think it's one of the greatest movies ever made. And why do I love it so much? A part of it is thinking, I was asked about this by Michael Dougherty once, that, did you think this was an anti-war movie? And I said, no, I didn't, actually, quite the reverse. And he asked me what, I felt like at the end of the movie. I felt like I wished that I'd been in the Rangers. That's what I felt like. Whereas I suspect that not very many women would have liked to have been in the Rangers, especially, with the, the rather high possibility of being shot or dying, agonizing deaths. In contrast, 67 of the 846 movies had endorsers who were no more than 10% male. Granted, most of these female-friendly films are less distinguished than 2001. Still, Sense and Sensibility, which Emma Thompson adapted from the Jane Austen novel and starred in, is terrific, but only 4% of its fans are men. I think that there's a possible reason for this, that men have been dragged by their girlfriends and wives to so many dismal rom-coms that, of course, Sense and Sensibility and these other Jane Austen films are marketed as rom-coms, and men, no, I don't like that. And frankly, I think that a lot of men, if they're asked about Sense and Sensibility, oh, this is one of those Jane Austen films, and there's so many of them, and I saw one of them or two of them, and they get them all mixed up. Saylor writes, we can use this database to compare less dissimilar movies as well. Consider two 1940s masterpieces, Orson Welles' liberal Citizen Kane and Frank Capra's conservative It's a Wonderful Life. Is Citizen Kane really that liberal? Because it seems to me that the message of this film is not about Rosebud, which is just a MacGuffin. The message of Citizen Kane is that no man can know another man well. Because, what was Charles Foster Kane really like? well, we meet all these people who knew him, worked with him, were married to him, and they all have wildly different opinions about him and what mattered to him, what he was like, etc., etc. But in any event, 70% of women like It's a Wonderful Life. Only 35% of women like Citizen Kane. Huh. The visually innovative Citizen Kane wins on openness, of course. In contrast, It's a Wonderful Life is a proto-Twilight Zone fable about a good man, George Bailey, with a hunger for openness, a desire to see the wide world, but a malevolent fate seems determined to keep him from ever setting foot out of Bedford Falls, constantly drumming up new small-town crises that only his conscientious presence can resolve for the good of the community. Hence, Capra's movie scores at the 98th percentile on both conscientiousness and agreeableness. I would like to see an age breakout for women on that, because it strikes me that, the message of It's a Wonderful Life, that you have a duty to your community. Do younger women believe that now? Again, I'd like to see a breakdown on this, say, married women versus single or divorced women. I think there'd be quite a variation there. But someone had asked me for, a list of my favorite films or whatever, and I remembered that I had made one up. 52, one for each week of the year. And I suppose, aesthete, it took me, aesthete as I am, or wish to be, I agonized over this list for many, many hours, while acknowledging that, I would probably make a list that would be considerably different in, several years' time. But that's, that's how it works. But I was curious that Steve Saylor responded to my list, stating that, interestingly enough, apparently a large number of women like A Clockwork Orange, which I find rather difficult to believe, but that's what the survey shows. And I'm going to take a final look in the chat and see whether it has calmed down there. Oh, we have a golf comment. That's a nice segue from Steve Saylor. Schizo Rick, aka Quantrell Bishop, says Trump has been working on his swing. You can tell his hips have more mobility on his drive. Tells me he's not serious about the steel. Huh. Okay. Wow. Everyone is going at everyone else in the chat. What is it about today, I wonder? Chad Chadson, our valiant moderator, says Ocean Shores is on the coast of Washington, an hour east of Olympia. Oh, okay. So it's really not that close to Seattle. Ricardo Williams says, Alex DeLarge, I will be leaving if Trump loses before YouTube kicks us out. Chad Chadson says, oh, it's where Kurt Cobain grew up. Wasn't he sleeping under bridges, or did he just make that up? A very sort of self-pitying narrative there, or lionization from Kim Cobain. Although I have to say, Kurt Cobain, I have to say, I just want, perhaps one day I'll talk about this, just see extraordinary coincidences between the life and I suppose the artistic output of Kurt Cobain and Hank Williams. YT says some blacks on Twitter are saying their magic potential will be unlocked by the vaccine. They aren't joking. Really? Oh, wow. Sociopaths. Okay. Okay. Wow. It's yes. They're just okay. Perhaps people will calm down tomorrow. Chad Chadson says he was very homeless, got kicked out of the Safeway I worked at several times. Yeah, I just thought it was a shame that he ended up with Courtney Love. some of those girls, musicians that he was involved in, that Mary Lou Lord, she seemed like a sweet young woman. Why couldn't he have stayed with her? Tomorrow is Theater Thursday, and I will be discussing a movie about a serial killer. It's from 1986. It's by Michael Mann and is called Manhunter, and it is exceedingly stylish. And on the book club Friday, I'm going to be talking about a trilogy of books about World War II, about the end of World War II, particularly the reconquering of France from the Germans, and what that meant for those Frenchmen who had been part of or close to, intellectually or otherwise, the Vichy regime. The novels are by Louis Ferdinand Céline, and they are called North Castle to Castle and Rigadoon. Furious books. Very, very funny, though. Céline was always looking to make jokes, and this is a very dangerous thing to do, and it didn't work out well for him, as he describes in the book. So that is the show for today. I will be back on the air tomorrow, which is Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you like the show or any part of it, I would appreciate it if you click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already done so. If you would like to make a donation to this live stream, which I would really appreciate now, because as I mentioned, I have to be out of this place by, I believe, January the 28th. And this is going to be difficult and expensive. How expensive, I don't know yet. But of course, whenever you move for some time afterwards, your hand is never out of your pocket, as the old saying goes. But if you'd like to make a donation, my PayPal account is linked to Kevin_Grace@hotmail.com. Once again, Kevin_Grace@hotmail.com. If you're Canadian, you can make a donation directly via Interac at kevingrace@shaw.ca. And I will leave you with my traditional benediction, which is, in these days of social atomization and societal collapse, civilizational collapse, actually, I do really wish that you, my dear listeners and viewers, manage to find a genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.